So the first thing, we'll try to create something like this. So a Cartesian base axis with title, labels, and of course the lines. And I want to make it automated. It should look something like this. So you can, for example, customize the dimension, the size of the axis, or like show only one of the axes. Restore every value. We can adjust the title, like the size and the positions, etc. Restore again everything or put everything off. And also the ticks, for example, you can show the values and the number of ticks here. Okay, let's start. So we go inside our project. We can call it Scatterplot. Go inside. Let's start with creating some random data just to show what we want to do. So we create a noise. To make it simpler, we can normalize the data with the limit. So the values will be from between 0 and 1. That makes everything very, very simpler. We put a null. And let's create a circle, SOP, and make it very, very small, something like 001. Connect it to a geometry. And then we can use the null for instances. So we switch instancing on, we put it translate, and then we have, let's create 2 channels so we can have the X and Y values. And here we can use X and Y or anything you want to fill them. Now, of course, now you can see the data, but we can display in our render to show properly. We need camera and an ambient light. We can use a null display, and last piece we need a material. We can use just a constant and attach it to the geometry. No, they are clearly too small, so we can use actually 0.01. And then we can adjust the camera. Now for the camera, there are some values that center our plot that have already experimented. So first of all, let's move the projection to orthographic and ortho width to 3. And then we move the X on 0.5, it's like center, and the Y to 0.6. That's good. So this is like what we want to show. Let's say that those will be our variables and they will be displayed in our plot. So we can start actually creating the Cartesian axis now. It will be like 2 lines here for the X and the Y axis. So let's start creating a container, or just a base is fine. We can call it Cartesian axis, and we go inside. Let's start creating a box. Actually, 2 boxes. You can call it them X-axis and Y-axis. So to work in a similar way, the best is to create also here geometry. We can merge everything. Actually, it's easier if we just hit right click and then geo. And then we can use camera, light, and the render. That's just to show what we are creating piece by piece. We can use this. Actually, I prefer setup like this, and here we can use the top viewer. So we have exactly what we're creating here. Okay, let's start creating the right features. So we can use, so let's say that we want to create, this is our origin. So we want this to be at 0 and going up and right. And the size should be ideally 1 or a bit more to be sure to contain all the data. So let's do like 1.1. Here something very, very small because we want this the x-axis. So it's kind of one dimension, but proxied with a geometry. So like 0.002. And here 0.005 work. Now let's switch this off to see. It's very transparent because we need also here material, so we can use a constant mat and we assign it to the material. It's very, very small, but it's already okay. That's what we want. We can just move a little bit the camera to show. Yes, and this is not important. Just to display what we are doing. The final camera, it's the one we created before. And let's do the same with the y-axis. So we can create same values but like inverted. So 0.002, 1.1, and 0.005. Okay. Now, of course, they start from like half of their value. So we have to make them in a way that they are programmatically correct. So we need to modify the center here. So let's say that I move this a bit. You see that it's going to the right direction. And the correct way to do this is to refer to this value. So we can use, you can drag this one here, reference, and just divide by 2. So now we have it starting from the 0, from the origin. We do the same here with the y-axis, and we will assign this. Oops. The correct one is size y divided by 2. Of course, this should be in the y-axis. So copy paste here. Okay. So now we have 2 axes of like size 1.1. That will be our x and y. Let's control that everything is fine. 1.1, 1.1. Okay. So now we want to add like small arrows here, like what we have usually in a Scatterplot. One here and one here. And we can do this with the tube. We can call this X arrow. We can do this by adjusting the radius to so 0 and 0.2. Now to see what we're doing, let's connect this to the merge. So we see. We can use a transform. So we can make it very, very small, like 0.03. That's acceptable. And let's use another transform for the rotation. We can rotate on the z-axis to minus 90. So it's pointing on the right. And then we move on the x here. So it seems like 1.1 is ideal, but the right way to do this is to refer to the size of the x-axis. So we can use basically this value. So to do this, we can use the reference. So OP x-axis par tx. Sorry, it's size x, of course. Yes, and like maybe we can also add like slightly more, like 0.001, or let's say 0.1, so it's actually to the end. Okay. Let's do the same for the y. Okay. I forget I'm using Mac. So copy paste all this, and then we can change some names. So like y arrow. Now we don't want to rotate, so it can stay vertical. Let's visualize it. It's here. Of course, we need to modify this. It's not anymore on the x-axis, so we can just put it 0 here. It will be on the origin. And now we want to move it up here. So OP, and the name of the operator is the y-axis. Copy paste. Par size y. And it's up here. And we can add the same, like 0.1. So it's actually at the top. Was it 0.1 here? Yes. Okay, so now our final goal is to have like a component at the top of our project that allows us to control different parameters. And in this case, we want to be able to control the size. So we want, like, we go up 2 times to our main project, Scatterplot, and we want to be able from here to control some parameters inside. If you're not familiar with this, you know that in this container we have some pages with different parameters, and we can create our own parameters. For doing this, we go to customize component here, and you see you can add both pages and name and parameters. So we can add one first page, and we call it Cartesian axis, and it will show up here. And now it's empty, we don't have anything inside. And the first thing we want to add here is something that allows us to control the size of this axis. To do this, we can go here on our network editor, and we want something that then allows us to control this for now, the x-axis. Let's say that we want, like, we can go crazy, we can also add big values, but let's say we want something from 1 to 2. We can add a float, and we can call it x-axis size, and we add the parameter, and it shows it here. Now it's very easy. We can just drop it here in the size x parameter as a reference, and now what we have here, it will automatically adapt to this. However, it doesn't make sense to have from 0 to 1. we will also make it in a way that we can make this axe to disappear. But for now, we want from 1 to 2, and we can use the default and the range values here. So the default was 1.1, what we had before, and we can do min 1 and maximum 2. So now minimum is 1, and if I drop it to the right, it will go up to 2. Now we do the same for the y-axis here, so we can add one y-axis size, still a float, and we will drop it here on the size y. It's this one. And here again, default was 1.1, minimum 1, and maximum 2. Now we can also make the axis to disappear if we want. And we can use again the customize component here. And we can create something like x-axis on. And for this we want a toggle, so we can just put on and off. We can put it below. And this will be connected to something that will make this one disappear. So one way is to use the bypass here, but this is not linkable to these parameters directly. We would need some code. And an easier way is to use a transform here. And you see the uniform scale, one is like the original size, and we can also put it at 0, so it will disappear. So we can just connect this to the uniform scale here as a reference. And we can put on and as default. Yeah, that's it. And we can do the same for the y-axis. So we can create one y-axis on, still a toggle. We create a transform here. And we connect this new parameter to the uniform scale. Okay, so now it's on and off. We should also do for the arrows, because like this is ugly. I have still the arrow here doing nothing. We can do this using this already existing transform, and we can for the X arrow we can connect this to the uniform scale here. And the same for the transform related to the Y arrow. We use the Y-axis on the uniform scale. So now if I do X on, off, it will disappear, and Y will disappear. Nice. Okay. Now what we want is to create another parameter here that if triggered, it will restore the default values we have here. So let's say that when we move these, we put everything off, and we want in one click to come back to this as 1.1, and this one as well, and everything on. So we can come back to the custom component page, and we can create like restore axis values parameter. Oops. And this will be a pulse, which is basically a button, and we can add it here, and let's just put it at the bottom. Now to make this to modify these other values, we need to use some code here, and we can come back here in our Cartesian axis operator, and we create a parameter execute. If you're not familiar with this, like parameter execute is just like a piece of code that will be triggered based on some condition, and the condition will be for this pulse to be pulsed, basically, to be clicked. So to do this, first of all, we go inside the parameter execute page. We put, so we want this one to refer to our parent component, which is this. So we can just drag this here to the operator. So now it knows to refer to this. And then also the parameters that will be seen by the parameter execute must be written here. And in our case, the parameter that we have just created is called this, restore access values. You can call as you want. And note that here in the custom parameters, you have both the parameter and the label. And what we want is actually the parameter. Label is just what is shown here, like in the UI, but this is not the correct name. So this can go here. And now, ideally, if you go inside, you can just make it a bit bigger, and we go back to onPulse. If we write something here, it should work. So let's write something like store, and we pulse here, and we see restore here. Can clean, try again, and we have it. Good. Okay. Now, to make it more consistent, we have to think about like what we will do also in the future. And in the future, we will have more custom pages and more parameters here. So let's check what we can do here. Maybe I will do from here, so we have more space. And then go up here and check the parameters here. So first of all, let's create a variable to refer to this component, to the scatterplot. And the way to do this is quite simple, because as you can see here, we refer the scatterplot component in this parameter. So we can create this, my op equals me par op. This will return a string, which is exactly this one. We can check, and print my op, and we can pulse here. I mistype here. And this is just a string. So to have actually the operator, we do just this op brackets me par op. And now if I do this, now we have the operator. You don't see the difference, but this is actually, you can check type inside. That's the container. If you do just this will be just a string. Or actually a parameter, because it's this one. So let's come back. Let's refer to the operator. And what we can do from here is to inspect all the custom pages. Let's see my op custom pages. And let's pulse. I forgot we want to print. And now we'll see all the custom pages, which is one, of course, it's only the Cartesian axis. But if create more, and let's say that I do this, don't do this now, just check. I create another page, page 2, and I add this page here, which is empty. Now if I do this pulse, I will have the Cartesian axis, and then the page 2 that we just created. You can delete it for now, and come back here. So now, to actually trigger this, for actually assigning to these values, we want this to be triggered only if we are actually using this. That's because this onPulse function, it will be triggered every time that a pulse parameter that is present here is triggered. And also we want this to affect only the parameters inside this page. So I can do this way. First, for page in my OP custom pages, print page parse. Let's try. So now, as you can see, we can display all the parameters that we have created in our page. So we have the x-axis size, xy size, the respective values, the on, which is true, which is like on, the y on, and so on. So for page in my OP custom pages, if page name equals, and now we do this, we can also take it from here. Can check, still working. And we can actually print the parameters only now. Print par name. Let's try now. Okay, now we have actually this one. It's like a tautology, but just to see, we can print actually par val. It's val. Okay. Now, if page is this one, and don't be scared, but we can do this for par in page parse, print par. Okay, so this means if like we check all the pages that we have here, if the page is the one we want, in this case it's Cartesian axis, let's check all the parameters here. So now let's print, and we have all the parameters we created here. Now we only see the value, so we can do par name and par value, actually par val, and now we have parameter and value. And now we don't care printing actually, but what we want is par val equal par default, and that's it. We can test. So these values now are a bit messed up. If I press this, they will come back to default. Also, as you can see, this y-axis should be on by default, so we can put it here, y-axis on default, and now it's on. So let's try again. So if I mess up and I switch everything off, now we don't see anything, but if I restart the values, they're back. Let's go up, and also here, so we can start fresh.